Hello, everybody. Uh, Thank you and welcome to this unique sessions. Uh, we know from research that 64% of the employees admit to breaking the security rules, and 39% say that it slows them down. But how do we reduce the element of human risk and make employees more aware of the risks of being a little careless with data and rules and regulations? So we will be talking about those aspects that can help you improve your cybersecurity posture and ensuring that you train your employees in a manner and fashion that helps them be more cyber aware, right? This session is going to be a lot about real world examples of human errors and how you can reduce them. It talks about how you can customize your training program so that it is not one size fits all. So we got a great response for this webinar, and different kinds of security professionals are joining. Professionals who are in compliance, people who are CISOs, people who are in the InfoSec. So we are hoping that it would be a very interesting session for all of us. And yeah, I think we should start. Lev, if you can just go to the next slide. Okay, essentially, we had a series of 9 webinars, which was targeted towards cybersecurity professionals, and it involved different aspects. It involved aspects on privacy, compliance, endpoint management, etc., right? So there were 9 webinars, and today is perhaps the last webinar. And you can get recordings of all these webinars and more on our website, right? Uh, can uh, can you go to the next slide, Liv? So I think we have 3 great practitioners here. So this is not just going to be a bunch of product slides. One, we have Lev. Lev is the Executive Vice President of Technology and Analytics in Outthink. He's been a consultant in McKinsey, and he has had a track record of delivering innovative solutions. Then we have Deepesh. Deepesh has worked across the Gulf, banks, oil and gas, government, consulting, and helping them with cybersecurity. And then later on, at a later point in time, we will have Mr. Hussain Bhagat. He's a very popular CISO, and he's at the Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, uh, called popularly as ADIB. And he is going to be talking about his experience, his insights, and his outlook towards the human risk management, right? So I've got the best people in this field for you today. And Lev, please take it over.
All right. Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Mukund, and it's good to be here. I'm broadcasting here live from New York, as they say, on some of our famous shows here, and happy to be with the group and with Paramount. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we call human risk management. Outthink's been working in this topic actually for 8 years. The term got coined by, or I guess first mentioned and used as the basis for founding a company by our founder. And I actually just met with Perry Carpenter, who's like one of the leaders from KnowBe4, which is a big player in awareness training, and he confirmed that as well. So I'm hearing this from other players in our space, although we'll talk a bit about the KnowBe4 style awareness training throughout this presentation. What I want to talk, though, what I want to start with, and this statistic that's in front of us, is just kind of the incredible increase in attention in cybersecurity. And I think most of us know this. Most of us that work in cyber feel it, and we see it. But the impact, so the spend, of course, is going up. This is the left side of the slide. So you see this is a data point from Gartner with some of their partners doing research on how much IT spend is happening in cybersecurity, and it's going up tremendously. But also on the right side, and I think this stat was done by the World Economic Forum, just the impact of cyber, on the economy, right, worldwide. And it's amazing. It's over 10 trillion. And actually, World Economic Forum has been labeling cyber security or cyber threats as one of the top 5 issues, along with climate change, that's facing our world today for a number of years. So when you look at actual breaches, and this is some research that was done in the UK recently, I guess about a year ago, and but the numbers are the same, and we'll have the Verizon number. They kind of, I'd say, vary, but they all tell the same story, right? That the vast majority of issues and breaches are caused by the human element, let's say, right? And so what we see is some of the causes that are human related here on the right, and phishing attacks. It's not like 90% of breaches are caused by phishing attacks. There's a little more nuance to that, but certainly folks clicking on the wrong things, allowing malware to be installed, based on through kind of the phishing vector, is clearly a big issue, right? And so we have, on the one hand, the spend on cybersecurity going up, the impact of cybersecurity and cyber threats going up, and the human element being a big factor in that. Phishing being a little more than 10%, but the thing is that when you look at secure behaviors, right, there's a lot that people in the organization, employees, IT users, and even non-IT users in like construction work or manufacturing work, a lot that they have to be aware of and that they have to do carefully or correctly in order not to cause a potential opening for a cyber breach, right? So it goes well beyond phishing. Okay, so I think actually before we talk about this statistic, it would be interesting to run the first poll question, if you don't mind. So we have a poll question. So just this is one of these polls that you can run on the fly, and please, everybody, click the option that most applies to you. We're not going to test you on it, just whatever feels like the right answer. And this is really about just kind of structured cybersecurity awareness program. Traditionally what we see, and this is kind of the element that I was talking about with legacy cybersecurity awareness training programs like KnowBe4, what we see is compliance-driven cybersecurity training. And let me see, I'm just gonna check mine here and close it. Okay, so and compliance, and I know that there are a lot of compliance professionals that are signed up for this session. Compliance is a fantastic driver of awareness and of putting security controls in place, making sure that there's full coverage of security controls. It's a fantastic driver, but actually when it comes to real human behavior and security built into the culture of the company, compliance actually works against us often. And you see this showing up in some of these statistics. Because in most cases, these are global statistics actually for the Verizon data breach investigation report and from Gartner. But most organizations run security awareness as a one-time event or maybe a quarterly event. It's compliance driven. And it's kind of a check the box activity. Yes, we've trained our employees, so we must be good. But in fact, still, the Verizon research shows almost 70%. And, we see these numbers going between 70 and 90, but the majority of breaches involve humans. The interesting stat, and Mukund mentioned it early when people were still just getting on the session, 64% of respondents to Gartner's survey admit to bypassing security controls. And we were presenting this in the Cybersecurity Human Risk Management Forum in New York a couple months ago. And one of the CISOs in the room just kind of quickly added, well, and I guess the other 36% lied about it. Being that, a lot of CISOs feel that everyone bypasses security controls at one point or another. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well with some of the approaches that we're seeing that work in the data that we're seeing. And the other really interesting stat is that 95% of those who do bypass security controls do it knowingly. So they know that they're doing it. So it's not really even a knowledge issue in many cases. It's something else, right? And so this is what the whole idea of human risk management is about, is to kind of get a little bit under the surface to really start to understand where employees stand on security and what we can really do to move the needle and to improve the security culture. Before I move to the next slide, if you don't mind, I'm putting up the next poll question. By the way, did we have any feedback or results from the first poll question? I'm curious.
Oh yeah, we did. We had about half of them talking about, nearly half of them said that they aren't doing enough about it. And then we had another 20% said that they're really good about it. And the other 15% said that they were actively considering doing something about that. So that was the
Yeah, and that shows, and I think a lot of practitioners in this space, and I've been to a lot of events here in the US that are focused on cyber culture, cyber awareness. And I think a lot of practitioners know that what we're doing currently isn't working and are actively thinking, okay, how do I improve it? How do we get the rest of the organization engaged in security? There's kind of a feeling of security being just our problem, or at least the organization saying like the security team needs to deal with it, but really it's a business problem across the board. How do we get the rest of the business engaged? And one of the ways that I think the industry has found to get people engaged is through phishing simulations. And that was the poll question. And as we walk through these slides, we can sort of, well, actually, I'm curious if we have a response on the last poll question about folks doing phishing simulations.
Yeah, just a second. I'll just pull that up. Prem, can you just pull that up? Actually, the second results to the second one.
Because this is one of the ways, and I'll talk about this in a second. Okay. Oh, nice. All right. Yes, this is one of the ways that the industry has found to actually at least engage employees somehow, so like they get something and they have to respond to it, or they ignore it, but at least it gives us some sort of signal. It's imperfect. There are a lot of issues with it. It's another rabbit hole to go into that, but it looks like maybe not the majority, but most, over 40% of you are doing it. And then actually, interestingly, almost another 40, a little over 40% are not doing it. So there's some opportunity, but it's a little controversial. A lot of people feel that doing a phishing test kind of catches people off guard and it's tricking people, and there are actually ways to do phishing training without catching people off guard, but still get the majority of the benefit and the engagement, which, if we want during the Q&A, we can discuss that. But the phishing issue is becoming much more relevant with, I think everybody here probably has heard about deep fakes. So, the hackers aren't standing still. We're using, the business is using AI and large language models for various improvements to business processes. Well, so are the hacker businesses. This stat here are this is from a month ago now, but still, this is like the number of page visits or site visits to the most popular malicious LLMs. And I don't know if you can see the names. They're kind of funny, like Evil GPT and Worm GPT and et cetera, right? So there's a big industry of hacking software and services as a service for hackers to rely on. And deepfakes are making phishing emails, real phishing emails and phishing outreach much more engaging.
Well,
yeah.
One important thing that we face during our engagements that we do, various audits and stuff like that, when we review the reports and all that, not much is done on the data that is received from the phishing report, right? As you mentioned, it's just a compliance driven where you have to do it and it's a check in the box. And not much is done on, okay, how do I use that data to ensure that, the awareness is again imbibed onto the users and probably there's no repeat phishing simulation attacks that happens and they will probably, click again on the link. So as much as organizations do it, but the data is not effectively used, they don't know what to do with that report. So that's something, challenge that we face during our compliance engagements.
Yeah, and that's very common, actually. And we'll talk in a minute about some of the stats that folks are looking at from traditional fish train kind of methods. But those stats are not very useful. And until you go a little bit below the surface to get actionable data, it doesn't produce a lot of information that we can use. So yeah, this is just more, I mean, it's staggering the amount of phishing emails that are out there that are sent per day. And of course, our filters, our email protection systems filter out most of that, but still a lot of it gets through. So now, in terms of the kind of traditional training, and this is exactly to your point, Deepesh, that what folks are looking at is completion rates and phish click rates, and those kind of metrics are of limited value. What we recommend doing, and this is one of the first recommendations that we've seen that works, is to actually measure engagement. And when you look at engagement versus completion, right, is of course you want engaged completions. That's the ideal, right? So high completion, high engagement, and that's the top right corner. But what most folks are getting is high completion with low engagement. And we consider that to be dangerous because it's a false sense of security, right? It's like, yeah, we checked the box, we got everybody to do the training, but they didn't pay attention to it. They just click, went through, maybe answered a couple questions and move on with their day, right? I would rather actually get low completions but high engagement, because maybe then that means my organization is busy, then I can maybe shorten the training, or and this is where, like, measuring engagement, you can start to do different things to make sure that your engagement stays high and see which departments have lower engagements and maybe run special sort of training or go on site for those departments, right? So you can actually make sure that people are engaged. But I'd rather have low completions and high engagement than high completion, low engagement, right? So that's on that. And so what you see, like, right, is we're faced with a lot of employees, most security organizations are outgunned and outnumbered. There's a lot of, even the largest organizations that I come across. I was just over at the NASDAQ here on Monday, and I was talking to their head of security awareness. They have one person that runs security awareness for a big organization like NASDAQ. MasterCard, maybe two people. So it's the disparity in numbers is quite striking, right? A lot of employees that we have to deal with. And what, as you were mentioning, Deepesh, one of the thing that we're looking at is the completion score. So what % of those people actually completed their training, maybe some sort of score on a knowledge test, and phishing click rates, right? And that's not enough to give us a full view. Now, this is where we start getting into some of the early elements of human risk management. What we recommend doing is actually going a level deeper and measuring people's intent to comply. So what here is called effective security. And mapping that against risk understanding. And this segmentation, this mapping comes from academic research done at University College London and one of the big German universities by Professor Angela Sasse, who's our scientific advisor. There are a number of other research studies that have been done on the subject of security or human-centric security, rather. And this data actually comes from Outthink. This is from our own research labs and what we see in reality in the field. So the category, the segment names is from the research, but the data of filling it with actual numbers is coming from our research. And actually 24% of the population of 4 million learners that we have analyzed could be considered as champions, but then almost half are what in the category called uncertain, which means that with just a little bit more confidence building and knowledge, they can also move up the scale and become champions, right? And so we recommend understanding who you're dealing with, like which people in the organization are champions, and who are perhaps what are called shadow agents or excuse makers or apathetic, and that basically having that knowledge then helps you understand what kind of content, what kind of training, and what kind of engagement you want to drive with each particular individual. And also some of the other elements that you want to look at are the person's role, their level of data access. Do they have access to PII, or are they just dealing with non-sensitive data? Are they in finance or working in the supply chain somewhere, or are they likely to be attacked because they have access to money or not? What kind of actions and behaviors they've taken in the past, and of course the psychographic segment, as we mentioned. So now back to the point of the majority of 64% of people actually bypassing security controls. The other thing that we recommend with human risk management is to not let the traditional security awareness program is a one-way street. It's like preaching. The security organization preaching to the rest of the company, here's what you should do. Did you hear me? Take a test, check. Okay, we've done that. What we recommend is rather a two-way conversation where, yes, you're feeding some information. Of course, you're training, you're educating your colleagues, but you're also taking some information back from them. And there's a lot that you can learn from your organization about what kind of, we call people human sensors, right? They can report poor security behavior that they see in their vicinity, in their group, or they can tell you whether they're able to follow a specific secure behavior or that gets in the way of their job, right? And so so that's this is one of the data points that we're seeing from that kind of feedback loop. And what you see here is that 38.7, almost 39% of respondents or learners who've gone through the training, this is not survey data, this is data from training. They say that that security is getting in the way, that they can't do specific secure behaviors because it's going to cause them to lose productivity. It causes friction. Now, 60%, a little over 60% say, yeah, we can do this, and it's not going to, these secure behaviors are not going to get in the way of doing my job. And then what you see here on the up and down axis is the intention to comply, right? Again, something that you can measure from the feedback loop with your learners. And, the majority here, you can see, in fact, we see most elsewhere in the survey, we see something like almost 80% of learners they have good intentions to comply with secure behavior, but almost 40% say that it will get in the way of their productivity. And this gives you kind of an early warning that, hey, and especially the specific individuals or departments or groups where that's the case, you can see that you need to perhaps change your security controls or do something, maybe give them another tool like a password protection tool or secure file transfer tool or something like that, because their job demands for them to do something that will bypass security controls. So it's a good way to kind of proactively get in front of that.
Just a second. Just a couple of things that I just want to make at this point. One is that we have Mr. Hussain Bhagat with us. Thanks for joining us. That's one point that I want to make. He's the chief CISO of ADIB, and he's going to offer his customer perspective very soon to us. But hi, Hussain. Welcome. Thank you. So the other thing that I wanted to make, other comment that I wanted to make, and I just wanted to open this up to both Deepesh and you. What options do InfoSec or cybersecurity professionals have when an employee comes up and says, your security policy is coming up in my way to do a job, and I'm not going to follow it? Typically, what is the remedy that's used in such situations when people talk to customers? What do they react? How does it happen?
Well, and actually, I think this is a perfect time for Hussain to have joined as well to talk about his perspective on that question. So from what I've seen that works, right, is first, you have to assume, and it is certainly our ethos to assume that everybody comes at this with good intentions, right? No one's going to just flaunt security policy just because they feel like it or because it's inconvenient or whatever. Like, they're going to want to do the right thing. And the examples that we've seen where this comes up as, people flagging even in the training, saying that this control, for instance, always encrypting data, just to give you that example, because that's a recent one that I've seen, always encrypting data before sending it to somebody, or not using email to send data, right? Excel sensitive data, whatever. What comes back is that this is something that they've always done. This is part of the business process. It's what the business demands. Our customer on the other end, they expect this file from us. They don't have any way to decrypt it. I can't encrypt it, because then my customer is not going to have a way to decrypt, right? So that, just in that one example, that's the kinds of things that come up when you start to dig into where you see policy friction, right, or control friction. And so then, to answer your question directly, Mukund, then the option is, okay, we're here as a security team to support the business and enable the business. So what can we do to make sure that they can still continue to do their job, but give them a more secure way to do it? And it probably involves a tool, but then you don't have to buy that tool for the whole organization. You can just buy that tool for the team that needs it, right? So you can kind of find those opportunities in the organization where you can use specific tools for to do those business processes securely. I don't know.
Thanks, Lev. Right, and first of all, thanks everyone who came today. Right. I hope you excuse my let's say my messy camera. Right. I had to take. It's one of the CISO problems. Right. So I banned Zoom. Now it's paying me back. Right. So by any means, I'm happy to be among professionals. Right. I'm Hussein Dagat. I'm the Group Information Security Officer for Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, right? And we're also a customer of Outthink, as you obviously know. Now back to the question, right? That we're speaking here around users not compliance or non-compliance of users, right? Let me take a different step here, right, or a different approach, right, on how I see it. So we're looking at our users, right, and we write policies, we put controls, we put tools to help them, and so forth, right? However, end of the day, we're looking at this from, I would say, a militaristic approach, and for very good reasons. Why? Our job is to protect the bank, right? We're on the line, right? The management is asking us, right? And we rely on our users to help us. But if you look at the backdrop and you think about this this compliance issue correctly, I myself tied back down to the overall organizational culture, right? In specific, I tied to a specific value or moral, which is loyalty. So I always tell my management this, right? Our first line of defense is the culture of the organization, and our first line of defense is how loyal our employees are, what's their passion about the organization itself, because when you're passionate about an organization, when you love your work, when you come very, very happy and very energetic to your work every day, any employee, you will do whatever is possible to protect that organization. And I think this is the true control. So when we, let's say, compare the example here, right? So I am an employee and let's say I'm in love with my organization, and my security officer is telling me this is a risk to my organization. To begin with, I will do whatever is possible in order to protect this organization. But if I'm coming here 9 to 5, and there is a total emotional disconnect, right, between me and my organization, then we would run into this kind of problem. So it's basically a partnership between the CISO and the user and the senior management. This is the triad that I always look at, right? Are the users willing to help me protect the bank? Am I willing or able to help them by providing tools and making their life easy? Is this communicated from the top? In very simple terms, this is how I look at this problem. So actually, when I'm faced with a user, and thanks, Lev, right, that is, let's say, doesn't want to comply, I question myself first. How long have they been with the organization, right? What's their background experience? I give them a call or ask my team to give them a call, and then try to establish the rapport around their behavior. Is this a business need? Is this lack of knowledge? Is it lack of training? Is it maybe based on, let's say, certain organizational impression? And only then you can fix this, let's say, organizational behavior overall and drill down, instead of solving a user by user problem, drill down to the root cause and address all your organization employees correctly.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And this is very much aligned with the approach that we would propose as well. It's that alignment is super important, but then kind of going below the surface and understanding where does that user stand. So this is a little kind of a network diagram of the organization. Where do they stand in terms of their attitude towards security, towards the organization, and actually having an understanding of that at scale is where technology really can come into play. Very much aligned. I think that's kind of the thought leading approach to this in terms of human risk management.
So is it time for poll number 3?
I lost track of where we were, but yes, I think this is probably as good. Actually, yes, that's a good place to do it. So yes, so if everyone wouldn't mind doing this quick poll question.
This is an interesting question, and the question is, how confident are you in your employees' ability to recognize and report phishing attempts?
Yes, ability and one of the things that organizations are starting to measure is something called dwell time, which is reporting. So the focus is on reporting, phishing attacks. And so if the time from the first citing of the emails to the point at which it's reported is the dwell time. And you want that time as short as possible so that if a real phishing attack is happening, then your security team has notice from the employee base. They act again like as human sensors and report that, and then that phishing attack can be stopped. But to report phishing emails, people have to recognize them first and have the good intentions to the organization and want to support the organization's security posture. How did we do on that poll question?
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. I mean, 22% say that they're very confident, and 61% people say they're somewhat confident, and 17% of them say that they are not confident.
Okay. So it's a little bit across the board, but that's good. That's good. So yeah, and perhaps phishing is probably the most trained aspect of cybersecurity these days, right? So I think the traditional approach of fish train, it sounds like most folks are engaged in that reasonably well. So coming back to
I have a point here, Lev, right on the poll, right? Because all right, the question, of course, is asked by every board member and every senior management, right, in every organization. But the question here is, what's your confidence index, right? Is it a feeling or is it data, right? Just to make sure this is understood correctly, where is your confidence moment? Are you somehow confident today, but are you more confident tomorrow and less confident after tomorrow? And let me tie that to a specific experience I had. So, for example, I noticed that maybe our, let's say, phishing campaign failures are getting high, and I always try to compare that to the actual production failures, right? Just to understand the baseline of the organization, right? And you can as a CISO, right? Since you're driving also big part of the strategy of the organization, to start comparing these simple numbers I'm going to give you. Have you tried to launch your campaign, let's say in your Q3, assuming that most of your business projects are launching in Q3? This is exactly where people are tired. They are working so hard. Their attention level is probably low, right? Do the failure rates compare equally when you do this, let's say, during Christmas holidays or similar holidays? right? So what I want to say here is that baselining the behavior of the organization will enable you to really pinpoint this confidence level, right? Phishing simulations are one time, which is why I'm not a big fan of them, right? They are one time, maybe one moment in the life of the user that they might be attentive and they might not be attentive. One other key elements that I look at is the amount of missed emails have not been, let's say, answered. Maybe your employees are like over stressed, or they don't care, or there is a cultural issue in the organization, and basically you will find that people are not even responding to phishing emails. Whether that you consider this a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because it bears both ways, right? So that's my view. I mean, confidence, right, is a big word when we talk about phishing and user awareness, and I think it's very tied to context, time, and mood.
Yeah, and these are all really important insights to get into with, and again, at scale with all of the individuals that you're dealing with. One of the criticisms I would offer of traditional awareness training is that every time that you do a phishing simulation or an awareness training campaign, traditional awareness training does it in the absence of knowledge about each individual, and it doesn't retain kind of that scorecard or the portrait of each individual. And it's important, as you say, Hussein, that if that individual has what we call in our parlance email fatigue. That's something that we measure as part of the profile. Seasonal email fatigue, to your point, and their confidence. You see that in the profile here. There's only a little bit of the profile showing on this slide. And you can't treat individuals as unknowns, because you do know something about them from prior campaigns, from prior outreach, from prior behavior. And exactly what you're saying, your approach to them needs to vary based on what you know about them. So yeah, that's I think that's really good perspective. And actually that, this slide's it's kind of like a technical slide. It's a little hard to read, but the thing that we recommend in this vein is what we call adaptive security awareness training. And it kind of is in line with an overall movement within the security space. A lot of tools are becoming more and more adaptive, like adaptive MFA. And I'll talk about the maturity levels in a minute, but it's certainly a very high maturity approach to security, to make all of your security capabilities adaptive. But you can start with the training and adapt the training based on, what their knowledge is, what their main struggles are. So like, high volumes of email or what have you, so that you can be really precise, targeted, and relevant. And you can spend less time training people on things that they already know, right? So it's easier to go through the content, and it's more efficient for the organization and less chasing. So that's a bit about adaptive security awareness training. And here we have kind of the models of maturity in human risk management. We actually, and this is like the last poll question that we have, Mukund. I think this is a good place to probably put it as we talk through this slide. But through this concept of a maturity model. But yeah, most I don't want to say this before the poll, but the traditional compliance-driven is maturity level 1. The next level of maturity is adaptive. Sorry, I don't know if you guys hear the background noise. I apologize. The next level, what we call proactive, is actually tracking and understanding all aspects of kind of the human risk portrait of all the individuals. And then the predictive is full adaptive security across all of the domains. So conditional access, identity access management, and adaptive MFA. So people are faced with controls that are based on what their security profile is. So if they're someone who is, to Hussein's earlier point, very much aligned with the company, loves the company, wants to really support security, then you probably need to put less controls on them than somebody who is like, well, I'm here 9 to 5 and I don't care and I just want to get my work done and get out of here. They might need a little more security controls. Anyway, so how did we do on the poll?
No, we are going to administer the poll question now. Can you just get the poll question?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, it's put up.
So the majority of organizations that we come across, and this is in North America and Europe, as well as the Gulf region and Middle East, are in kind of, and I alluded to this earlier when we talked about how a lot of folks are starting to look beyond traditional security awareness. But this is where most organizations are. They're kind of at the tail end of the compliance-driven traditional legacy awareness program and looking for ways to improve that because engagement, and everyone knows, right? Engagement with security across the organization is very hard to achieve, and changing the culture is very hard. And you see this on LinkedIn, people commenting on various podcasts and blog posts. How do we get the organization to actually work with us as opposed to work against us, right? And just a question, Hussein, perhaps to you, and if this is something that you see, like in your business, do you feel that the engagement with business leadership is something that is very easy? Business leadership is bought into security, or something that you have to kind of fight against the current to kind of get the business on board with security controls?
All right. Okay. It's a good question, right? I'll not talk from a personal perspective. I'll talk from CISO's perspective, right? Because look, I think with all due respect to everyone on the call, but I think we as CISOs generally, we're doing a lousy job, right? And I'm being very honest here, right? We're doing a lousy job because we're thinking that we mandate controls, we mandate policies and all that stuff. And this gives us some sort of false understanding that someone else needs to follow automatically, right? And this is exactly where the gap comes in, right? The concept of human relationships in general is based on providing value, right? So if a CISO doesn't provide value to the business, this doesn't necessarily mean that you listen or do for whatever they ask you to do, whatever the risks are. But if you're providing value to them, they will start conversing with you and they will start, let's say, communicating their strategy, their needs, and so forth. If you're not providing value and only mandating controls, right, and also always raising the stick about the risk and the world will end today and so forth, right? This is probably where we as CISO, let's say, fail to deliver the message. So the ease of conversation starts very unselfishly, not from security. The ease of the relationship comes from understanding the person or the business person in front of you, what's their needs, what's their challenges, what are their plans, what are their aspirations, and then you ask yourself, so I want to be friends with this business unit, right? How can I be useful to them, right? How can I enlighten them around the risks of their approach, right? And how can I enable them to move faster and better through risk? Only then, when you are able to get this magical view or magical angle, And only when you communicate security from that point of view, they will start listening. Because, I mean, let's be honest, every business person, let's say revenue generator, they would like to, let's say, increase their sales, increase their numbers, because end of the day, they want to make the organization successful. Now, the question in with this security guys or CISOs coming in and stopping things for me, what will happen? I will automatically, let's say, try to avoid them, right? But if they come to me understanding exactly what I'm trying to achieve, and then tell me, heads up, right? Your revenue is going to get impacted if you do 1, 2, 3. Your customers' trust and confidence on the long term are going to be impacted, right? Your vendors and third parties might fail you, and accordingly, this will have impact on your sales. Only when you drill down to this level of details, not being generalistic around description of risk, you become specific to their needs, to their plans, to their strategy, then you will become more than a welcome person in the room, right? But otherwise, I don't see it happening. So I guess it's not Hussein's problem. I'll tell you very honestly. Sometimes I have hard times with my senior management and my board because I simply miss it. I didn't understand the context. I didn't understand the strategy, right? And sometimes I'm very lucky, right? I do understand it and I do get it. And it's hard work. And I think it's the only work for the CISO. The only work for the CISO, in my opinion, is to be an orchestrator, be able to understand the tone at the top, be able to respond to it, and be able, I wouldn't say translate, but be able to put a realistic view of security within the business challenge itself. So for me, any relationship is not consistent. It's up and down, just like anything else.
Yeah. And do you find that because there's so much written at this point in the media about cybersecurity, and there seems to be in general a much higher awareness than, let's say, 10 years ago, that and we saw earlier the statistics, and you've seen that in the slides when we talked the other day. So there's a lot more spend on cybersecurity, and it's a lot more impact to the economy. Does business leadership and the board that the board of the business, right? Do you have a more welcome reception with them because, it's become a bigger issue, or has that not changed over?
Well, look, I'll tell you over, let's say, the past 3 organizations I've been with. So you're right. I mean, media has been very kind to us, right? The ecosystem has been very kind to us to attract attention. World Economic Forum, everything, right? I mean, and because it's true, right? Because the risk is there, it's getting bigger, everything is getting digitized. The economy is now based on digital infrastructure, and accordingly, the major risk is cybersecurity and possibly also privacy, right? So this added a lot, right, in terms of welcoming. But that's out of our hand. I mean, again, being very honest, no thanks to us, right? we did not. Yeah, we did not do that work, but we can use it, right, to our advantage. So yes,
exactly.
Actually, what I can see now is that management are more eager to hear about cybersecurity. Spend is another issue, right? Because again, spend is dependent on value. If you're going to drive value, then definitely spend will be there. But I would like to say that what I noticed that the senior management or the boards in general, right, what they are interested in and not getting from us is the continuous communication or the continuous conversation. So they hear about this from World Economic Forum. They attend these consultants' briefings. They read these newsletters, all that stuff. So they know about it. However, their most interest is to hear about this stuff from their own CISO. How are we as organization impacted? Are you aware of this? Can you make us aware? What is the context here, right? And I think this is where good cybersecurity /board/senior management conversation takes place, when this link is alive, right? I mean, you don't have to go to, I'd rather not to go only with bad news, right? But I go with good, bad, neutral news, but I always keep them in the loop. And this is exactly where you become someone who's, let's say, impactful in decision making. And accordingly, the moment the moment you start asking for funds or investment or whatsoever, everybody thinks that this is a one-time approach. I'm going to build a business case, I'm going to get it approved. That's totally the wrong approach, in my opinion. You start building your business cases long way through your conversations to build your credibility and believability. The business case approval is the last milestone. That's the closure.
Yeah.
Not the start. Yeah.
It's kind of the formalization of the overall discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Hussein, you're one of the early adopters of human risk management. So, we're all quite impressed with that. What has been your experience of actually digging deeper, into human risk management?
Yeah. All right. Okay. It's a good discussion, and honestly, let me start first by explaining. How I see awareness in general. So, as far as I am, let's say, understand the problem with my own mind, it's the following. Number one, humans are not risk, right? So this is the first thing, right? Humans are an element in the ecosystem. I completely disagree when someone says the weakest links and all that, right? I completely disagree.
Yeah.
This is a failure of communication, in my opinion, right? So I put my confidence in the employees and the users, right? So we build the controls, we build the tools, right? And it's the understanding of these users, right, and how to enable them that defines the next step. This is where human risk factors come into play. I don't agree with naming it human risk. I would just say human behavior, human nature, that I have to accept as is. I have to understand. I have to build the overall picture. As you have mentioned, Lev, I have to have data, right, in order to be able to address the root causes of the problem. Now, the human risk element, right, as you like to call it, right, is part of a bigger whole, right? The bigger whole is to ask yourself, are you baselining? Are you collecting the right data from the right sources about your users' behavior? Do you understand your organization strategy? Do you understand the ups and downs of your users, right? Do you have this repository of information that enables you to make a decision? Within this data that doesn't exist within any human risk system, right, then becomes the data that you collect from a human risk system meaningful. So when you say, for example, I have this high risk user, right, or they are not doing their training, or right, whatever that data points are, without the overall context, and you start comparing your baseline and your data to the data that you're collecting, it becomes again invalid, right? Why it's invalid? It's invalid because it was measured, right, for one user at some point in time, but it doesn't take the organization context, right? So for me, HRI is the first building block in understanding your awareness strategy and your organizational
human risk intelligence.
Yes, the structure. The other elements that I found it very powerful is that the human risk will give you insights on what else needs to be connected. So, for example, with our human risk platform, you can start, let's say, ingesting or connecting data from other systems. Let's say data leakage, maybe also, let's say, attendance, right? Maybe training. But there are many other points, right? That hopefully on your maturity structure, you can start to integrate into your human risk understanding or human behavior understanding, right? The last mile is how do you plan your action, which is again very useful. So as you said, fish train. We know that doesn't work very well, right? And actually, my board challenged me that, all right, your training is useful, right? And I said yes. Sorry, it's useless. And I told them, yes, it's useless, right? It's not working, right? Our results are not improving because people don't like that. We are now living in a generation that sees YouTube Shorts, TikToks, short SMSs, and so forth. So the attention span of this organization or this current generation is very different 10 years back. Now the question is, who's leading you to understand that the behavior has changed? It has to be a platform that gives you this behavioral change, and accordingly you would start and say, all right, let me nudge my users through WhatsApp, all right, or let me send them a small tick on their training, or why not just make the training maybe 2 minutes, right? Or my mandatory training, and then split it all over the year. Why not start addressing younger generations, let's say, for example, from my employees, with a different awareness message from the one I address older generations? Why don't I start segmenting and understanding my users from very different ways? Why don't I understand that project managers are different from IT people, are different from sales guys, and are different from senior management and board, right? Now, if you start playing around with all these dimensions within your human risk platform and not just accept it for a fact, this is a high risk employees, all right, let's punish them, or let's do whatever, give them mandatory training. This is a good employees, I'll leave them on the side. No, it's not that simple, in my opinion. You need to continuously slice and dice your audience and your employees and become more innovative. And to do that, you cannot just be thinking out of only your head. You need to have some data that guides you. Where is the next challenge? Where do I need to improve? Yeah, and I think this is the real value of human, let's say, risk platform. It's the insights that they give, not the decisions that is made in these platforms.
Yeah. Now, that's a great point to end it on. I see Mukund is giving us a high sign. I think we're a little bit over time, but I think that's a really good on the ground description.
I think it's just great about the perspectives that Mr. Hussain got to the whole conversation, right? It's way beyond so many slides that we had. So I think what we need to do is we've run out of time, but we are ready to continue, and we would like all the audience that is there on the still on the webinar to continue to be there. We have 1 or 2 questions, and we will answer those questions as well. Please continue, Lev, or do you want to straight jump to questions and answer those questions?
Yeah, I think we're done with the formal presentation. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Mukund, I don't. Of course, I know that the question is probably going to be targeted to the experts here, Lev and Deepa as well, right? But I can literally sacrifice maybe 2 minutes, so I can take maybe 1 question, but I'll really have to drop off now. And I'm really happy to be here and really happy with the discussion. And I hope the audience, right? I don't know. I cannot see their interaction, but I hope they enjoyed the discussions, and we're not just conversing for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you on, Hussain.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll answer Syed's question. Syed's question is how to bring awareness among users to avoid phishing emails, or how can they identify that it's a phishing email? How to control and stop these? I think if you can just give an overview, that'd be great.
All right, I think we're talking here about prevention, right? And how do we help the user with more controls, right? So I think it's a structured approach from different things. So I'll just tell you my approach. I'd like to think it has worked well for me, right? There might be others that are better. So basically, you have to understand what's your baseline. First of all, from a production perspective, right? What's the baseline of the phishing emails? How many people have responded to? How many has gone through? What's the nature of these emails? How do they look like, and so forth? Second pillar, after you collect this baselining, you probably start tweaking your controls to lower that baseline. This is the technology level. Then you need to understand your users, right? And understanding your users is usually, again, through either platforms like the human risks, through phishing tests. It also happens through surveys, happens through conversation, and then you start building the big pictures, which means what is the, let's say, total personality of my organization, if that's a thing, right? And then what is the total risk coming from outside to this organization and the trends there, right? Only then you can build an effective awareness plan saying, all right, I can have this opportunity to build X, Y, and Z controls, right? And I have this opportunity to improve on the, let's say, the internal employees' response to phishing emails. I usually find that the best messages to train users are the ones that are repetitive, short, and sweet. So you have to bang on the nail until it sits in the wood. It has to be short, so you have to be a welcomed guest. Otherwise, people will start ignoring whatever channel that you're sending on. And it has to be sweet. It has to bring a feeling. If you do this long enough, I think you have a good chance of getting your users to identify phishing emails more easily.
Okay,
Hope
there's
that
another
answers it.
question. There's another question. I think, Lev, this was a question we were expecting, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm afraid. Look, I'm sure we have great questions. Happy to take them later, but I think I'm way off my time, and I apologize. Right, I want to stay all day. I love talking about cybersecurity. Thanks, Lev. Thanks, Muluk. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, Hussein, for joining.
Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Lev, the question is, cyber criminals using AI attacks has increased, which is very difficult to identify. How do you change training approach to manage these risks?
Actually, this is kind of related to, I was going to add another point to what Hussein said about, how do we help prevent phishing attacks? One of the things that we do, and so I think the two questions are related, and that one of the points I want to make is related to both of them. One of the things that we do is we actually, like when we run a phishing simulation and somebody actually clicks on a phishing link, a simulated phishing link, we do what we call a root cause analysis. And so we ask them, what is it that made you click on the link? And then, they have a few options that they can fill in. Again, the point is that the training is not one directional, it's two directional. We're learning about them and we're helping teach them based on what we're learning about them. So we're adapting the training. And so, it could be that they'll say that, hey, I didn't think to check the URL. I didn't, I don't know who this is, or I wanted this offer. So we ask, like, what is it that got them to click? And then the training actually becomes really short and sweet when you can target it at the specific deception technique that person has fallen victim to. And actually, we published a paper, I was just looking at it 2 years ago, which we probably need to refresh and put it out there again, especially in light of deep fakes. So this last question that you asked, the deep fake makes the email or the video that is being sent to you much more believable, much more credible, and much more compelling. But the deception vectors, the social engineering techniques are still the same. And they're the same as they were 2 years ago, probably the same as they were 10 years ago. I can't enumerate them all off the top of my head, but there are something like 7 that have been identified. And one of them is authority. I'm from the post office, I'm from the government, I'm your boss. Another one is urgency. You have to do this now. I have no time. I'm your boss. I need you to check this file for me. I'm not available. I can't help. Don't call me. Right. So it's kind of this urgency and unavailability. Right. And so you kind of combine authority, urgency, maybe curiosity, and there's other factors. And as long as you're aware of what those factors are that can drive you to click on something or download something that you really shouldn't, that can trick you, then you're much more protected than if you don't know what those factors are to look for, right? So yeah, knowing what the root causes are, why people click, and knowing which root cause applies to which individual, how fallible they are to each specific deception technique, and training them on at least the relevant deception techniques that they are fallible to, or maybe all of them. There aren't that many. Like, here's what you need to recognize. And then it really doesn't matter if the video was altered by AI. Yeah, then it just becomes a delivery method, the deepfake.
Great. Okay, I think we've really run out of time, but it's been an engaging audience. I think we've got a great discussion. Thank you so much. But before we go away, if you have any last moment questions, we will just wait for another 30 seconds, or else thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Lev. I know it's early in the morning in New York, but you woke up probably at 4 and took this session for us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deepesh.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining, and thank you everybody for coming on to talk about this very important topic.